Hi, and welcome to this channel where we are serious about play and games. And here we take the creative side of that hobby you love and make you think deeply about it. But we also do some lightweight episodes, such as reviewing new games. In this case it's Mutant Chronicles Siege of the Citadel, and this is the second version of the game. The first one came out in the 90s. Let's take it over to the table. As I grew up, Siege of the Citadel was one of my favorite games. Role-playing games was a thing in Sweden, but Dungeons and Dragons wasn't. And that meant we never really did this thing with minifigures moving around the table. It was more about sitting around the table and telling a story. So when this came out, it was one of the first games that was really widespread and moving around on square spaces. Having said that, of course, Siege of the Citadel is not fantasy, so it's a different setting. They called it techno-fantasy, and Modifius kept using that term in this one as well. I don't know what that means really, I don't think anyone does. But it's a science fiction game in a futuristic setting that is not believable. There are huge monsters and there are people in great warrior costumes killing each other and so on. And in that way, I guess it is a fantasy game. It is kind of similar to something like Dungeons and Dragons, when you take on a class and you go into dungeons and you kill stuff. But this was not the only thing. This was one game. And there was a role-playing game as well, which was more of this, sitting around a table and telling a story. This was about the big, cool heroes that wandered off and did the big things. But the role-playing game was more about the small heroes, the ones in the back alleys, the ones doing investigator stuff. So that's why I call this science fiction noir. Because there you had this investigator ending up in situations, it's dark, rainy, small stories about people. While this is completely different, this is about heroes. And the setting is futuristic. The solar system has been explored and they found a lot of things. And then there is this kind of 90s horror part to it. So what they found included, of course, a lot of important things that they needed, like resources, but also they found this evil, and now there is a big war against that. So it's quite a big box. And on it you have this Siege of the Citadel and the Mutant Chronicles logo. So Mutant Chronicles was the name of the role-playing game, and Siege of the Citadel was the name of this particular game. And then the image includes 2 of the Doom Troopers and a couple of the monsters. On the side of the box you have the logo for the game, but you also have a couple of logotypes over here. And these are the logotypes for the different mega corporations. The mega corporations are the big companies that are ruling the world. In the setting, there are no longer countries. Instead, these work more or less as countries. So they have their own agendas and they are doing their own thing. But they are also helping each other, because they are all fighting against this evil. And that's one of the things that makes this game interesting. It's a combination of fighting together to overcome the evil, but also trying to succeed with your own goals. So you're always fighting against and with your opponents. Next we have the rulebook. Image shows all models. And the rules are to a large extent similar to the old rules. They are not the same, but they are similar. And they have kept some of the most important parts, I think, including this competing together and against each other. Next we have the mission book. And the mission book contains the actual missions, how you're going to put up the scenery and who is going to do what at what point and so on. So these are the floor plans. And you can put them down in different ways. And by putting the floor plans down in different ways, it becomes different kinds of labyrinths. The heroes are entering from here, the enemies entering from here. Here we have presentations of all the characters. And one thing to note here, especially if you played the old game, is every megacorp has 3 characters. In the original game you had 2. And I think most of the time the 2 of them are still there. So Valerie Duval and Max Steiner was in Bauhaus last time. Mitch Hunter and Big Bob Watts was in Capitol last time. Coral Beach and Vince Diamond, Sean Gallagher, and Edward Murdoch, Tatsu and Tetsukage, I think. And the reason for having 3 is because they introduced one new type of character. In the previous game, you were either a close combat specialist or a distance fighter. In the new game, you are a close combat, a distance fighter, or a computer expert. So there is a 3rd role added into the game. And of course, some images of the cool creatures as well. The models, let's keep them. Save the best part for last. A deck of card that's actually the wrong size. And these things happen. This is a Kickstarter, so I got this one, but at the same time as I got this one, I also got a box with a new deck of cards. So what happened was that the printers printed it in the wrong size. And, well, it's really just millimeters, but it's quite important if you want plastic pockets for them. Here are our mission cards, the hero cards, with their affiliation or the Megacorp, and the role, the close combat. Here's a distance fighter, and there's a computer specialist. Here are the special abilities. So things that the characters can do which no one else can do, and usually you discard the card afterwards. The equipment. Weapons as well as other stuff. Reinforcement cards for the enemies. So every round the enemy gets cards, and that way they get new models to put on the field, and also sometimes special abilities. These cards, at least if it's played the same way as before, are placed on the playing mat so that you know what cards you're gonna flip up every time you enter into a new room. The game is beautiful, it's really nicely layouted, but the thickness of these cards are on the thinner side, so I would be careful about these because I think they're gonna break if you're not careful. So that's one thing I would have liked, a bit of a better quality too. Otherwise, this far I'm really impressed by the game. Plates for each player to place their cards and things like that. Promotions, health points, and so on. Pegs for use in these holes. And below the deck of cards, the dice. And these dice are very similar to what they were in the original game. There are 3 types of dice: white, red, and black. The white die contains 2 hit symbols, the red die contains 3 hit symbols, and the black 4. That way they become better and better, but they basically just show you hit or miss. And during the game you gain more and more dice, depending on your equipment, and then you level it up. Exchanging white dice for red dice and red dice for black dice. And before we go into the models, there's one more thing. The base plates. Also, there are more decks of cards and some plastic pockets. But I don't think we will dive into that deeply. These are in a way very similar to the old game, with walls and corridors and rooms that you move around in a square-shaped thing that you can put next to each other. But the layout is completely different. And they are double-sided. Of course, there are also a bunch of different things to punch out. Level indicators, player badges, portals and doors, and so on and so on. And before moving away from these base plates, I want to talk especially about this one. This is the Citadel. And this is punched out. Because if we go back to the box and those final pieces, and we move them to the side, this bottom becomes the floor of that Citadel, and that way you get the staircase, which hinders line of sight and things like that. Very similar to the old game. The heroes have different colored base plates to be able to separate them from each other. While they are nice, the plastic is still a bit thin on some, so this one is wobbled, for example. I know you can fix that, you can heat them up and make sure to fix it, but it's still a bit annoying. I would say these are considered 32mm rather than the heroic 28, which the old game was. That was the heroes. Let's look at some of the bad guys as well. The necromutants. The centurion. And a big guy, the Rasid. Praetorian Stalkers, quite wobbly here. I think I can fix it. The big bad. And actually I'm saying this is the big bad because this is the monster in lead. But there is a bigger bad, the Esogul. And the models in this game is a big update from the previous version. These are really beautiful, the old ones not so much. As I said before, one of the things that makes this game interesting is that you are playing together, but not only together, you also have secret missions, and I showed you the cards. And those secret missions, sometimes they go against the main mission, so you have to decide if you're going to go for the main mission and get those points, or if you're going to go for your mission and get those points. So while you are cooperating with the rest of the players, you are also competing against them. And all players, except one, are playing together to finish the mission. And the last player is taking on a Game Master role and playing the evil characters, the monsters. But if you play the game over a longer time with more missions, the role of the Game Master changes, so it's not one Game Master. You take on the role of Game Master during one mission. And you can get points even during that mission. So you're always trying to win. Due to demand in the Kickstarter, there is a collaboration mode where everybody's playing together against an AI. I have not tried that, so I don't know how well it works. But for me, the game is about this thing about changing roles and playing together but against each other. So I believe the game should be played the other way around, and I believe that's what the modif is intending as well. Even though it's fun to be able to play together every now and then. But I will at least begin to use the original way of playing, because I think that's one of the more interesting parts of this game. And that's actually one of the things that was the new thing when this game came out as well. The thing that had not been done before. So this game is more of a polishing of the old game than it is about making a completely new game. And maybe it is nostalgia that makes me interested in this game. I don't know. It's an old game, and the old game was not that well balanced, so it might not have aged well. That we will find out over time. But it's nice models, it's nice prints, everything is looking beautiful. The cardstock could have been a bit better. That's actually my biggest concern. And there's a lot of more expansions to this one. It's being produced right now, so it's part of the Kickstarter, but they decided to send out this main game first, and then the rest of the stuff will come later. So probably we will come back to this and talk about it more, and at that point I can also talk about the game system being played a bit more. So if you like this, check out another video over here about other reviews, for example, or check out another video over here that is something that YouTube thought you would like. If you like this, consider subscribing. I'm gonna put the subscribe button over here. So please click that one, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!